That was just as I expected. Very rough.
A little wake up rough jam.
Well, you know what? They don't call it bad karaoke for nothing, right?
There you go.
By the way, I have COVID, so I have an excuse for playing like crap.
Oh, really? You do?
Yeah, I do. That's why I was wearing a mask. So everybody, we apologize. We actually did a recording on a regular time, and I forgot to press the record button. And we had a wonderful episode, and we lost it.
I thought it was amazing, actually.
I thought it was, I know, and it was great having you back, Andreea. By the way, welcome back. We missed you so much. Thank you for contributing to our inclusiveness, because it's been a dude fest for months.
Oh, gee.
And, we're just afraid that, people are going to start to condemn us for not, being inclusive and espousing diversity, which we do, right? I mean, we're open to everyone. We have an open door policy, right?
Oh, yeah.
Hey, you do.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. I spent a lot of time in Europe last year. A lot of time, and the time difference in Romania, 8 hours to Dallas, 10 hours to you, it's been very difficult. In the past I was able to attend some of the sessions, but last year I couldn't.
Yeah.
It was evening time, and my mom was in a hospital a lot, so I had to be at the hospital, so it just didn't work out.
Yeah, and we miss you. We missed you. And
I miss you too. Like every week I check out what happened. I look and see what happened.
I was like, oh my God, what are these jokers doing? So hey everyone, before we start, remember we have a charity. It's called Elevate Our Kids at www.elevateourkids.org, and the purpose of this charity is to help to bridge the digital equity divide for kids K through 12. It's a wonderful charity. We hope that you'll go and visit the site again. It's www.elevateourkids.org, and you can make a donation, all right? And it's really easy. There's a form and everything. And if you're not into charity, but you're into fashion, you can order one of these things. And you know what? You will be the center of attention at your local Costco. Because my entire family has these hoodies, right? These beautiful IoT Coffee Talk hoodies. And we get so many compliments. Like, oh my gosh, you guys look so cute. Where do you get that?
It is nice. I have a blue one in the house that I bought for my nephew in Romania.
Yeah.
And I'm able to get it to him. And I debated whether I should wear it today, but just blue is not my color. So I said no.
Blue.
I don't believe that. I just don't believe that. But okay. I think blue is your color. You're pretty close to blue right now.
It's
it might
gray.
be the quality it's what?
This is gray. It's a gray sweater.
I don't know.
Just the video looks, I know.
One of those internet memes, is it gray or is it blue?
Yeah, I was about to say.
That's it. That's the one. Yeah. But I like Pete's, the red one is awesome. I got it from my son.
Yeah, I like the red. It's nice.
Yeah,
but Elevate Our Kids is not only operating in Texas, correct?
No.
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 When I first met you guys, I thought that because Stephanie is based in Texas, but then I learned that it does not. So
yeah. So anybody who's a IoT Coffee Talk listener, I mean, please, donate, because just because the pandemic is over, it doesn't mean that we've bridged the digital equity divide. It's still out there. Well,
it's more important than ever that kids have tech to learn. Unfortunately, that's kind of what they have to have. So
unfortunately,
come
on, we're
there's so
all
much
champions
reliance on tech and education these days. It's gotta have.
So I mean, that was our second lost episode. Isn't that pathetic? We had a lost episode before, and this was our second one. And we're pretty good. This is an episode 195, guys.
Gosh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and we're still going strong, regardless of whether people listen to us or not.
Well, there's never a shortage of things to talk about in the.
There never is.
Yeah, we enjoy ourselves, right?
Yeah, we have fun, and
Did anybody take notes as to what we talked about yesterday so we can repeat it?
No, we talked about RFID
A lot.
Yes.
quite a bit.
RFID and IoT context.
Yes.
And I'm kind of bummed. Hopefully, David Vasquez jumps on soon because he was like.
No, I think like this ambient computing thing. I mean, hopefully David does join us. But like, I did spend some time with Steve Statler from Will IoT on my show and learned a lot about the, RFID, which gets charged when you scan it, versus some of the other tech that's out there that is charged by like kind of random Bluetooth energy, which is everywhere now. Yeah. And so we're seeing this stuff evolve to become even more, sort of ambient and, capable without actively having to read the tag. So you can actually now start to sort of gather data on objects, sort of just ambient, right? And in the warehouse or in the retail store without actually breaking out the scanner. So that's pretty cool. And I think, obviously it's huge for retail and supply chain and things like that. And I think it'll start to become ubiquitous. And whether it's shipping labels or, on boxes or built into packaging, someone will figure out how to do it at such a low cost. It'll be kind of a no-brainer. So
some of the shipping labels that you're talking about, I mean, now they, not only do they have RFID, but now they have cellular on some of those shipping labels that are
a little bit of there's a little bit of a radio in there, and that's the trick is like how do you get the data off the label to something.
New working group item in I think release 18 is ambient IoT for 5G, and like it's funny, nobody talks about 5G anymore, and it's weird. The technology is stacking up. It's just people haven't made that transition towards standalone networks and cores, and so once they pull that trigger, there's going to be a whole huge set of features that are going to become available. That's one of them that's sitting in the hopper right now. It's a lot of possibilities. I think, the tragic thing is that people have just been so exhausted with all these misguided, silly notions about what 5G will do, that now we could, be overshooting on the skepticism. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But it'll be a nice surprise, right? When, people pull the trigger on this thing, and then all of a sudden they realize, wow, there are all these industrial use cases that we can support. But it might maybe not along the lines of what people were originally hyping.
Right, probably a lot less glamorous than the initial vision video.
Really stupid.
A lot more practical.
Highly valuable.
But, speaking of surprises, the big surprise for me is, I come from telecom, but I no longer work in telecom. And 3 years ago, so between April and the end of the year, my team where I worked, we sold standalone core to two large providers in Canada. And just now I saw in the news that we're launching it. So 2.5, 3 years later.
Yeah,
it takes a long time. But so
yes,
the hype cycle is always the the overestimation in the short run and the underestimation in the long run.
Exactly. I mean, to me, that's clear proof, because when we sold it, when I was there selling it, it was working very well in my employer's labs. We didn't sell paperware and slideware. There's no doubt, but to take it live, it was so much more cumbersome.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because we were talking about everything cloud native, right? Everything was cloud native, everything involved, multiple vendors, not just like, okay, deliver hardware, deliver software, done, tested, done. One interface, two interfaces, done. So, yeah, that's proof that stuff takes time.
It's commercialization. They call it the commercialization point of product. That last 5% of commercialization takes like the 95% of the time. It's like, I get it to demo. I get it to, we used to do this at Microsoft all the time, like private preview, public preview, GA, generally available, doesn't mean necessarily fully commercialized, right? It just means it's available to be commercialized.
And both, I worked for Ericsson, so I have a lot of trust in Ericsson, a great vendor. I know how they did things inside, but also the two customers are very nimble, very smart.
Yeah.
So if the vendor that Ericsson is and those customers took a long time to get it done, it takes a long time to get it done right. I do.
Yeah. Well, it's crazy. I was in Wujin back in 2017, and Huawei was already demoing things like, network slicing. It was like a test bed that they were demoing, right? So, and so a lot of the 5G technologies were pretty well advanced. I think people don't recognize that the standardization process or coming up with the tech specs that 3GPP then freezes and then it becomes sort of the global standard. That's what takes a while, right? But the technologies, the candidate technologies are developed and can be demoed, and it's pretty amazing. But exactly to the point you're making, Andreea, so many people discount what it takes to implement technology. And that's where I think the folks who are the casual futurists who have no real grounding in technology, they just read headlines and press releases and think that they actually know technology and the dynamics of actually extracting value out of it through implementation. They create a lot of the damage that we've seen in the last 4 years with 5G. And it's been, look at what's happening right now. If you want evidence of why hype is bad, just look at what's happening right now.
Yeah.
And that's why hype doesn't survive on this show. You come on this show, just be ready to get railed if you come in here with a BS message. It just doesn't survive. And this is why we end up calling it through these organic debates time and time again, whether it's crypto or it's metaverse, industrial metaverse, or whatever, and now generative AI.
Industrial metaverse.
Wait to see what happens with generative AI. You're going to be so disappointed. It's actually quite frightening.
I saw a post the other day on LinkedIn about impact of generative AI on productivity, and that it's not what it was expected to be. I'm like, expected by who?
I haven't even started yet. The results are in. Generative AI is no good. It's like, what? It's getting started.
No, what are you talking about, man? Everyone, I think we mentioned it a couple of episodes ago. Everyone's going around talking about that BCG report. So all these guys who are, talking about selling like prompt engineering courses, and
yes,
how to use AI in your enterprise, which is
Bachelor
basically
of Science in
some
prompt engineering,
pseudo SEO guy, turned all of a sudden AI expert, going around with this deck saying, hey, look, at BCG, the quality of their work improved by XYZ. But if you actually read the study, there's no substantiation of that claim. In fact, you start to get the hint that this was a very poorly done study.
Yeah.
And that's what that is what was published a while back, before even people really knew what the capabilities of generative AI applications were. And people were, there were enterprises still POCing it and not releasing anything into their organizations because, they're problematic,
No, I think people are grasping for data points to validate their, bias a little bit. And, but so you have to discount, you have to calibrate that and try to cut through that and try to find what's meaningful for folks. I saw Bob O'Donnell had an interesting newsletter post today on the effect of generative AI on devices, which I thought was good. Mm-hmm. I think he took a pretty balanced approach at it. Like, what does it really mean for, you had the rollout with Samsung and some of the scenarios and some of the things, like what really makes sense, like for on-device AI versus cloud-based AI. And I think that's going to be a debate that's just going to happen. And at the end of the day, it has to be scenarios that people want to use over and over again, and not just demo and show once, but actually the engagement of these scenarios and capabilities will be the proof point that people are actually using them and getting value from them. And it's going to take some time to shake all that out. So,
but let's give credit to ourselves. We've been talking about that for a year.
Yes, of course, we've been completely dead on.
Not news for us.
Pete, you bring up a great point about putting it onto the device, versus the cloud. And there hasn't been a lot of supporting documentation as to exactly how that happens and what it is, what it's going to entail, because right. And so I could see it on the device, but God, the pressure on not putting more stuff on devices.
Sure, it's going to be it's a trade-off of, and you've got what everyone talks about LLMs, but SLMs, small language models, right? Microsoft Phi, and Google Gemini versions, and Llama 2 and stuff. So there'll be stuff on there. The question is really, what's the use case where you need it? And there are situations, especially in industrial environments, where you need things that are occasionally connected or air gapped, and that's totally rational.
Right.
On your PC and phone, I think you can probably squint and maybe find some things, but again, time will tell to see what scenarios really stick.
But here's the problem. People keep thinking in terms of LLMs and SLMs, but actually there's some smart people, a few of them that I spoke to at Sensor Converge last year, who are just looking at transformers, right? Mm-hmm. That's the foundational technology. That's that big aha that happened, and then above that, they created an application that is basically, a large language model, right? You see all these variations, but the foundational technology is the transformer, right? Mm. And this is why it's so important to know the difference between technology and an application, which people screw up all the time and get confused. There are these really brilliant engineers, okay, that don't imbibe the hype, looking at, how does this fundamentally change how we can do enhance our ML capabilities for enhancing sensors, some very, very narrow things, but leveraging that to be able to process, build models that are more capable. They're not, and based on my conversations that I had with these engineers, it's not an order of magnitude improvement. It provides let's say a step change, but also additional complexity that has to be managed because it's just not reliable. And so if you go and you talk to the guys who are building smart sensors, they will tell you most of the customers go for the relatively stupid stuff, right? This what we used to call algorithms. They don't go for these more dynamic solutions.
Well,
because they're just not reliable.
It's overkill.
No, it's not. It's never overkill if it's reliable. If they can get 6 nines,
right,
reliability.
Like they don't want to get a bunch of false positives that there's something wrong, and like 9 times out of 10 or whatever the number, it turns out it's not.
Yeah.
So I think the reliability, but
multivariate models. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like crazy stuff.
Right.
It just doesn't work because it introduces so many errors into the function that it's better to have something that's very narrowly trained and just work with.
True.
Basic.
But I think narrowly trained, and also I think, there's like the isolation forest and these other types of anomaly detection models now can be run at very low power with some of the newer chips that are out there. So I think we will, and then they'll, and the training of that and the updating of that model, all that stuff needs to work for people to really kind of bet on that in their deployment. And we're getting there. And I've worked with semiconductor companies that tried it and they kind of backed off. They said, you know what? It's too complicated. It's too complicated to train, deploy the models and update them. And so we're going to back off on the message until it gets more mature. I think we're getting there now with like the ethos stuff and some other things, but inevitably the tiny ML and those types of AI things will become pretty standard deployments. But it's going to take time and it requires more, ML ops and more training and more, updates, which typically in those types of environments, like you said, people say like, I just need a sensor. I don't want to update it. I don't want it's out in the field 10 years from now. It's stuck near some boiler unit in a dark place and I don't want to mess with it. So it has to get to that level of bulletproofness before people really bet on it. Yeah.
And for anything that's networked, there's always, the issue of conflict. That's becoming a bigger and bigger issue. And when you listen to people that are thinking of applying generative AI or any kind of AI for that matter at a network level, that's becoming increasingly a problem that actually gets more challenging as you delegate intelligence further out toward the edge, right? It's like in a federated way, how do you determine what is true, and then at what level do you bound responsibilities from a policy level, right? It's like how much jurisdiction does, let's say, the SMO have versus like the R apps and the X apps and stuff like that. It just gets like really, really friggin' weird.
Yeah, we'll see.
Anyway.
Yeah, we'll see.
What problems does it solve? Does it still solve customers' problems? And it costs.
Well, I think by the way, I think predictive maintenance is going to be a hot area. It's always been a hot area, and it's when it is deployed properly, it's a real game changer and a money saver. It just has to be done with confidence and in a bulletproof way that makes economic sense. And one of the scenarios I had in my edge note was around the washing machine that is running predictive maintenance on the current draw, and they can tell that this guy's been overloading his washer too long. So it sends them a message saying, "Hey, I think your motor's going to die in about 3 months or whatever. If you do a service call now, we'll give you a big discount on the deal." And so, and the generative AI based agent talks him through the scheduling and all that stuff. And then he gets the motor replaced, and doesn't have any downtime with his laundry. So I think stuff like that's going to work eventually, but it just has to get, going back to that first comment about commercialization, all the work it takes to really make that bulletproof and deployed. I think these types of preventive maintenance
is it greenfield
scenarios,
brownfield too, Pete?
Yeah, no, and I think it's going to happen. It's just has to get commercialized and has to get mature and bulletproof.
I could have benefited from that when it came to my fridge last year or 2022. Our fridge died, and to get something comparable, we had to wait about 4 months.
Right?
Oh, no way.
So if you had a 4 month, head start to say, hey, your fridge is going to die in 4 months.
Exactly.
I'll give you a discount if you buy one now.
But, and also, we had some maintenance done on it when we saw it kind of starting to warm up, and there was waste of time. That maintenance was waste of time and waste of money. So for me, that's the interesting part when I start zooming in early on. That it's not worth spending this time and money on it.
Right.
Go get a new one.
You had the signals already.
Yeah.
The fridge was warming up. So there's no reason why a sensor in there couldn't have said, I'm detecting like an increase in your temperature over the last 30 days, blah, blah, blah. And so there's no reason why we can't get to that level.
I just wish, I wish we figured out like an LG or a Samsung figures out the aftermarket scenarios for that. Like can you imagine that kind of market where you had an aftermarket predictive maintenance? I don't know.
I was just about to say something. So here's a dirty laundry dynamic that we can talk about.
Well, it seems like that's the way we're going. Thanks, Andreea.
Predictive
laundry
is like weird because IoT folks I think in general think that predictive maintenance has sort of this, let's say, singular or static value proposition through the life cycle of a thing, right? But I think, it changes during the warranty period and when you get out of the warranty period, right?
Yeah, because it's programmed to break right at that 3 days later.
Yeah. Because after, they don't give a crap. Because when it breaks, they charge you so much for the service and any parts, they're trying to drive a refresh cycle.
Maybe they need to kick in the predictive maintenance after the warranty, right?
Yeah. So if you really think about it, there is no value proposition of predictive maintenance for the end customer. It's useless
until after
it doesn't do anything. If anything, it's like you can't trust it. Because for all you know, all it's trying to do is tell you need to spend half of what you paid for the dishwasher. And this has happened to me actually this week.
I see.
On an out-of-warranty dishwasher, okay? Which is why inside I was chuckling as you were talking about that, Pete. It's just, you can't trust, you wouldn't be able to trust it because there's a conflict of interest.
It's interesting, you bring that up, you can't trust it, but I had some podcast or some webinar, predictive maintenance, Pete, and they were saying that the average alarm that comes to an industrial company about a predictive maintenance issue ain't fixed when it comes. Like it's not that they don't believe it. It either they're too lazy or it's just like on the list of stuff to do and they don't get to replace that motor or replace that valve.
Yeah, no, I'm sure there's.
So you wonder, the ROI is there to sell this stuff to them in the beginning, but if you don't do anything with it,
yeah, of course. Yeah, and also if there's too many false positives, you start to ignore it. You calibrate that. It's probably not anything because it wasn't anything last time. And then, but one of the dark sides of predictive maintenance or these connected devices, I think I mentioned this in the Lost episode, was the story about HP and when they detect that you're using third-party inks, they'll break.
Oh yeah, right.
Imagine if Bosch bricks my fridge because I put in the wrong water filter or something. It's crazy. So that's pretty bad. So there is a dark side to this, but again, that's a company's decision to sort of tarnish their brand if that's what they want to do. But hopefully not. Well,
yeah, I mean, but even think about it, even during warranty. So the vendor, they might not want those signals because that's let's say that it's not reliable. That's cost for them because they have to roll a truck or they have to bring the unit in, and so it's like insurance. And so whoever thought of that connection between it's all risk management, right? But the thing is that's I think why some of these IoT solution concepts are so difficult to sell. And why predictive maintenance in and of itself. I mean, we've been hearing about predictive maintenance forever. It's like I don't think people have sat back and really thought through the dirty laundry elements to figure out what a real solution would look like. You know what I'm saying? No, seriously. I'm not kidding.
That is the real solution.
What?
I mean, because they don't know any better.
But that's the problem. They don't know any better, and they're not making really a great business out of it. It's because they haven't really thought through the solution.
Right.
Well, you're selling insurance on a freaking pet rock. Is like what it boils down to.
I want a chia pet.
I mean, Andreea, tell me. I mean, if I'm saying something stupid, by all means, we've kind of touched on this before, but I think we're evolving the thinking, the perspective. And I don't know if we're going to piss off our IoT buddies here, but I mean, geez, how long have we been, talking about predictive maintenance and how it's been always.
Well, usually, so this is another thing that suffers from hype cycles, right? You get all excited about it. Like I said, the silicon can't run the models. You don't really have the ML ops. So it goes out there. And like I said, there's a company I worked with very closely. They made a big deal about it and gunshot detection and glass breaking sensors, whatever. And they basically just said, you know what, we're just not going to talk about it anymore because it's too hard. Our customers can't figure out how to deploy this thing, whatever. Doesn't mean it's not going to happen at some point. It will happen. Someone will figure this out. It's an opportunity. But it's something that suffered from, I think, an initial hype cycle and a disappointment. And it doesn't mean it's a bad idea. It just means it hasn't been fully implemented yet.
I don't think it's a bad technology or approach. It's just people haven't thought through the solution.
Not at all, but it's complex.
Was that a cost issue, Pete, or was that a?
They were saying that their customers tried to implement this stuff based on the demos, and it required too much kind of AI ML expertise, too much capabilities of updating the models on these remote light poles, and too much, just too hard. It was too hard, and it wasn't worth it. And so they didn't see the uptake on that value proposition. It's obviously that was a couple of years ago, and so they just said it's not going to be a front and center marketing message for us right now because we know that it's hard to really fulfill that promise.
But do you know anybody who's successfully doing that now?
Yeah, I mean, we have 1,700 poles in Atlanta with gunshot detectors and glass breaks for the local neighborhood. So if someone's trying to smash in the window of a car in the middle of the night, glass break here 2 blocks inside.
It's getting out there.
But the buyer was Atlanta police, not, so I mean, you got to look at who's utilizing that. And then all of a sudden they wanted surveillance cameras and a little bit more detection of face anomaly, facial recognition. And then you add public Wi-Fi on top of it. And all of a sudden, it all works out pretty much without having any kind of.
And that's an opportunity for the solution provider to deploy it properly, and that not everyone is like grade A on that. So. And
even talking about industrial, preventative maintenance. I was on a phone call with a client yesterday, and you're talking about some of those large industrial sensors that are doing vibration monitoring and temperature and everything else. The industrial ones are like $400 or $500 for an actuator based in a sensor. I mean, people are like going, "Oh, this little thing is $500. How many do I have to put in my?" And so it goes back to that price. But you asked me to give you a recommendation of a preventative maintenance IoT sensor based program for your industrial line. I mean, what do you want? I mean.
Yeah, it's an ROI, I worked with an oil and gas company once, and they educated me about how they needed to encase the PCB in epoxy in their sensor because it can't spark. So if someone if it gets crushed, you can't generate a spark. So you can't have any metal touching metal because you're inside a refinery or whatever, and there's gas. So
there was a company out of Atlanta, out of Georgia Tech, that was doing intrinsically safe IoT sensors. Failed miserably. Just could not. Yeah,
super expensive.
Expensive. And the volume wasn't there.
Yeah. Well, you need to sell into an Exxon or a Chevron, otherwise it doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we need to make sure that we recognize anomaly detection is not predictive maintenance.
Agreed.
Not necessarily.
Totally agree.
It's anomaly detection. It could be a capability for a predictive maintenance solution. But there's I forgot the name of the gentleman that always talks about he's going to kill me. See, this is the problem. This is the problem with smartphones. People, you lose your memory. You forget people.
I see. I thought you were going to say COVID fog.
And you know what? I now I forgot what I was going to say.
There you go. See,
isn't that amazing? Causality. And being able to further qualify whether or not a signal that you're getting through your anomaly detection is actually indicative of a problem, because systems tend to be very complex. You have noisy meters, you have calibration issues, you have all kinds of things that can generate a false positive, but then the effort that it takes for, especially in brownfield, like you're saying, Steve, to codify that quote unquote knowledge and experience into a system, a predictive maintenance solution, is, I think, largely impossible.
Yeah,
I don't want to. I was hesitant. The long pause is because I was contemplating whether or not I should say impossible.
Well, I mean, it's interesting on the aftermarket,
largely impractical.
The aftermarket brownfield world. All of a sudden you get into discussions of, hey, do you have a C port or a HDMI port, or do you have an extra USB port or something like that in order to put something on an existing product? Because no one wants to open up the kit box and snap it in a daughter board into somewhere that'll give you that. So you end up having stupid conversations about brownfield aftermarket predictive maintenance stuff. It's just really hard.
Yeah. I think the other thing we talked about, by the way, the other day in the lost episode was the fact of how the stock market reacted negatively to all this weather. Turns out that's all been fixed now.
Yeah, exactly.
All got fixed in 24 hours. So everything's back up again. So.
Yeah, the bloodbath on AI on Monday and Tuesday.
Yeah, just a 24-hour thing. 24-hour bug
on AI.
Well, I mean, it goes back to what we were talking about. It's like the market reacts to earnings reports and then says the AI world sucks. It's like, how do you know?
And the next day, everyone buys. So
right, exactly.
Just goes to show you, it's early and it's very bumpy and lumpy and.
But I also think the valuations of these things are unknown, right? How do you put valuations on all this?
You don't. And then the analyst models, I think, are goofy. And here's the problem when, and we mentioned this on the second lost episode as well. When your valuation models are tainted with massive amounts of speculation, right? And then you have analysts who really don't know how to kick the tires on a lot of the stuff that these CEOs are saying. Okay, not asking deep questions. I sit on these calls, right? I'm sure that some of you do as well. These not good questions. They're not probing. It's just like ass spelunking most of the time, and not thinking through the whole mechanism or how a hyped claim translates into actual TAM.
Yeah.
Right? Like people are making stuff up. And so when you see some of the actions of what some of the guys are doing right now with the AI category, because we've seen it with cloud, comparing Google Cloud with Azure. I mean, what the hell is cloud anyway? And how do you tell who's beating who when everyone's portfolio is different? Whether it's Oracle, different portfolio stuff. Comparing that to Google, and where majority of their money comes from ad sales, I don't know. It just doesn't make any sense. And AI, the way that people are talking about it, if this is generative AI, they're starting to hide it. They're saying, oh, it's going to give us ARPU uplift. You're going to see it in some sort of nebulous form in the end market.
It's going to be, they're never going to break it out as their own thing. They're going to say, well, this is why we have, Windows uplift is because of AI PCs, or Azure uplift because of Copilot, or whatever it'll be part of that line item. You're rarely going to see companies break it out, especially at the software level. I think the thing is around AI is that the farther down in the stack you are, the more picks and shovels you're selling to the gold miners, then the more money you're going to make. So that there's a lower risk as you get farther down the stack to say, hey, look, I'm just making this chip, and whether your AI works or not, that's your problem. It's like, I'm still selling you the chip, and you can come up with some goofy app and no one uses it, but hey. So I think people are looking at value. It's more down in the bottom of the AI stack than at the top.
Yeah. And, nobody can explain to you. I mean, think about it. If with certainty or a certain degree of guarded certainty, they will tell you that they have a huge, massive TAM, and they'll cite McKinsey's $4 trillion number. They have when you start to ask them questions about, well, how does that work out? How from your business perspective, where are we seeing the levers that are pushing your business toward these astronomical numbers? Very little detail, yet everyone's betting on that. It's like, okay, where have we seen that before? Sure. I mean, it's just, I guess we're here.
Well, there's this thing about, direction and speed, right? You got to know the right direction. I think we know the direction, we just don't know the speed. And so therefore we don't really know how to calculate the impact yet, because the speed, we could be going 10 miles an hour or 100. We don't know yet. As long as at least we're going in the right, we know where things are heading. We just don't know how fast they're going to get there.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the cautionary note here for vendors in particular, now is probably the time to figure out what your pivot is. When
definitely,
shit hits the fan. Because the probability that the shit is going to hit. So if you're a vendor, you cannot explain to your own board how you're going to hit a massive TAM and you're going to make McKinsey look good by hitting this $4 trillion number. You better have a good plan B. And if you're an investor, you better have a good plan B.
You better have one.
How well do companies anticipate? How well do companies anticipate? This is about anticipation, right?
Depends.
Just look at the quarter by quarter reaction that you see. Absolutely, it's just
right.
They're slaves to the latest. They've dumped connectivity, telecoms down the toilet. They don't care about it anymore. And all the while, I'm telling you, Chinese government and Huawei are laughing their asses off. They're saying, go ahead, ignore Huawei.
But I think to Andrea's point,
they don't talk about 5G anymore. And, and that's what, going back to this hype, the damage of hype. Now 5G has lost everything. Nobody talks about it. No, they didn't even mention the X75 modem, which is just a friggin' marvel.
Beast.
In the new Samsung line of phones.
Yeah.
They didn't even talk about it.
Well, it's old news.
And now you have Huawei with their own 5G modem. They're completely independent of anyone in the West.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's just like, okay.
Yeah. I think to Andrea's point though about going back to predictive maintenance,
and then everyone dumps it. Everyone pivots to enterprise. Because they know that their stock will go down if they latch themselves to some sort of telco thing.
Yeah. But I think the part of this practice is good companies have a practice of continuously understanding strategy and looking at externalities that will profoundly impact their business that they have no control over. And I think good companies have a quarterly or regular process to look at that and make adjustments about where the future may go. That's the biggest danger for companies is sort of to get totally focused on their own business and not understand the externalities. And then they get hit, they get blindsided, and it's too late. It happens so many times. So I've been in companies where they have that process where it's like every quarter or so, we're going to take a look at all these things that are happening out there that we have no control over that could totally upend our business. And, we're looking for the meteors to understand. And I think that those companies can anticipate as best they can, what could happen in the future. But it's a discipline and it's hard to do, especially if you have an ongoing business that's doing really well. And it's sort of like, hey, everything's great, and you're not realizing the meteors that are coming in. So but it's tough.
And so, we got to do our disclosure here. So as with any episode on IoT Coffee Talk, take us seriously at your own risk. We're only here to have fun, okay? This is how we basically, just
relax.
That release, every week.
There you go.
But I will follow up on Pete's comment though. That is why you engage companies like NextCurve and all of us, because how else are you going to be aware of all the things that could affect
the outside in?
Right, correct. When you have the knowledge base of people that are doing this every day and have a pretty good sense of what's working and not working, don't feel like you can't engage us. I mean, that's it's amazing how many people try to do this stuff on their own and then have a meteor hit them.
Yeah, at a minimum, get a friggin' hoodie.
Get a hoodie at least. It's funny. I had a client who was potential client was asking me for advice on some strategy stuff, and they gave me their pitch, and I'm thinking, wow, these guys are in trouble. And I didn't say that out loud, but I sort of said, what I would do, and I don't know if there's anyone in your company telling you this message, but I would do like these 3 things that were pretty, dramatic changes to their strategy. I'm like, you need to come up with a story that works here. You need to make an alliance here. Otherwise, I just don't see this thing working. And, it's hard to find people internally to companies to give you that message because everyone wants to kind of get promoted and make the boss look good and not shake the boat. I see that so many times. I'm sure we all see it.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like, how do you get that honesty on the table to say, let's kind of think outside the box and have some hard messages that maybe not everyone wants to hear. And I think good companies have that discipline. They have that ability to hear bad news or at least take alternative viewpoints. But
they don't have to accept our pontification. I mean, they just have to, but listening to it sure is 100% sometimes better than what they do themselves.
It's tough. But
I mean, and it's weird. Ironically, eventually the market punishes these companies. It's asymmetrical on the way up, and it's asymmetrical on the way
down. Yeah, no, that's true.
But it has to be pretty dramatic, right, to be punished. But how much is happening that is not dramatic, but it still leaves money on the table, or it's
that's great point.
And I think there are people. I mean, I used to work in a large corporation, right? So there are internal voices that anticipate or, say things, and they're quieted down because it just doesn't fit the narrative.
Right. Or executing on it's just too expensive,
Yeah, that's true too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but you know what? What I find at the end of the day is that when you have those departures, fundamentally you're losing sight of what is valuable to the customer. Especially if you're a technology company. One of the things that I think is really, depressing about a lot of the NEPs, the big incumbent guys, is they were so focused on selling stuff that the operators, their customers had, measured appetite for. And then shedding off the stuff that actually is important right now, which is like for the network. And this is what I'm going to be focusing on at MWC is 5G modernization. What are these freaking vendors doing to help modernize the operator's network and operation so that they can, in a valuable way, make that first 1, 2, 3, 4 steps toward, upgrading their network in 5G.
Right.
And, and that's something I teed up last year. So if you listen to all the stuff that I did last year, that's what I teed up. This year, it's going to be more important than ever for the industry. And still nobody talks about it. They're just like licking their wounds going, oh, what happened to Open RAN? It's like, well.
Oh, yeah. Well, I wanted to ask you if you've discussed recently Open RAN or at all.
What?
Have you discussed it? Yeah, in this forum.
No.
No.
Yeah, a little bit, but
we made a couple of comments as to where.
Okay. Yeah, we talk about it in the future, right? Especially after AT&T's decision a few months ago.
Yeah.
To me, that was super interesting.
Yeah.
Super interesting.
Dish.
That's,
AT&T, Voda, everyone's kind of putting their bets down. It's just, again, I think it's a matter of direction and the speed. So I think the direction is pretty clear. It's just how long it's going to take to get there, and it might take a long time depending on, lots of factors. So
and a lot of people,
but what triggered me now is when Leonard spoke about modernization, because now people talk in terms of, are your radios upgradable to Open RAN? If you are, you're modernized. Software upgradable.
So one of the research agenda items that I have with Earl Lum of eJail Wireless going into MWC, we just cut like a podcast on that, short one, just to introduce what we're going to talk about. Talks exactly about that. You'll find it interesting, Andreea. I'd love your feedback on it. I mean, we've already, kick the tires on it. It's going to ruffle some feathers, no doubt. But it's just like, hey, you're not selling anything anyway.
Yeah.
What are you going to complain about?
Is it with Earl, you said?
Earl Lum, yeah.
Or Lum. Is it on LinkedIn or?
Yeah. I'll send you the stuff. But he's like Mr. Radio.
Yes. I know of him through LinkedIn. Yeah.
Mr. Radio.
Yeah. He's Mr. Radio. You want to know anything about radios? That dude is like the guy. But we have an interesting agenda.
Awesome.
Yeah, you know what? Don't get pissed off at me that you didn't sell anything. Be pissed off at yourself. Do you know what I'm saying? And I am officially the IoT asshole. So I don't know. That's kind of like, that's my delivery style. Unfortunately, it probably doesn't work for me. But don't be pissed off at me.
I agree.
Don't kill the messenger.
You out. We're just trying to help you out by cutting through the doo-doo, shoveling it.
By the way, I do need to also exit.
Me too.
Hey, everyone, thanks for joining us. And we really appreciate you, sticking it out to the end, which I'm sure that none of you have done. Subscribe to www.iotcoffeetalk.com for all the insanity on tech. Yes. And the clarification of all of that insanity here amongst this panel of IoT Coffee Talk peoples. And we will see you next week. Bye.
All right.
Bye. See you. Have a great day, everybody.